Oh, good. The voice is working. At least I think it is. I'll bring this closer. There we go. All right, everybody. Welcome to Kaza Jordan. I don't know how many people we have viewing on YouTube, but we don't have anybody viewing on Google Hangouts. I'm just going to go ahead and treat this as a dry run. I'm going to go through it, and then I'll post the link to the YouTube recording on Facebook. And if anybody has any questions, they can ask. The class is going to cover making a laser engraved rolling pin, such as this. Now, you see a lot of these on Etsy, and they generally charge $15 to $20 plus shipping. I'm going to show you how you can do it for about $10 plus the cost of gas. The elephant in the room is, and I already heard comments about this, I don't know how to use a laser. So I have good news on that front, and you don't have to operate the laser. The laser that I use to produce this is at it's in the Arapahoe County Public Library System. They have a maker space located at the Castlewood Library. It's on Uinta Street, just off of Arapahoe and I-25, down in Centennial. You need to have a library card in order to use it. But if you're a Colorado resident, then you can apply for a card online. Anybody who lives in Colorado. That's what I did. Once you have your library card, you look up the Castlewood Library Makerspace. You fill in the request a studio librarian form, and you tell them the dates that you're interested in coming down and operating the laser. You'll have to check out the schedule at the Makerspace because they have scheduled classes, they have regular activities, and you're going to want to build your time around that. But when you get there, you're actually not allowed to operate the laser. It has to be operated by one of the trained librarians there. So all you have to do is show up with a image file that is set up to be engraved, and you're ready to go. The rolling pin that I am using in this case was purchased from Safeway. And this rolling pin cost, my mind wants to say $8.99, so plus tax and everything, about $10. If you look up the brand that they sell in Safeway, and then you look up that brand on the internet, you can order these from Amazon for like $6. It's a wooden rolling pin. It has a plastic. Let me see. You can see that. There we go. insert and a metal bar that goes through so that it rolls very nicely and smoothly. One thing you need to know is the maximum length of the laser bed is shorter than this. So what you're going to have to do is either yourself or your significant other remove, I should sit back here, remove the handle. It just pulls off. I thought it was a twist, but if you just rotate these in a counter direction so that they're rotating against each other, one of the sides will loosen up. You'll be able to pull it off. Once you've done that, you'll be left with the barrel. And the barrel is just a plain, unfinished wood. Now, I've been told that there are food-safe oils that you can use to finish these. I haven't found any yet. I've used olive oil in one case. I made some flat cookie cutters using this technique. I haven't treated this one at all. When I look at this, I see a ton of mistakes. I think the images are kind of being monkeyed with as you look at this. Let me flip it around. So the most noticeable thing for me is the depth of the engraving that I did on this. You can't really tell. It is a very, very shallow engraving. Now, that is good and bad. Oh, good. Autofocus. Thank you. This will not make a big impression on the dough. However, you might not need to make it. I did this one at 100% speed and 50% power. That was the librarian's suggestion. Based on my experience working with other lasers, if I was going to do this again, I would do this probably 50 to 75% speed and 50 to 100% power. It's one of those things where you're going to make things and they're not going to work out quite as well. And you're just going to have to experiment. Fortunately, these are pretty cheap to experiment with. You could take 5 of these down and you could cut 5 of these rollers in about 2 hours if the time is available. Once you've done it the first time, it becomes very simple. One other thing I want to bring your attention to, and that is that lasers function by bringing lasers to a point. So a laser is not a straight line like a lightsaber, it's a cone. And the cone is brought to bear on the surface of the wood and it burns away the wood. Now, wood has grain to it. And the layers of grains are different hardnesses. They're actually different densities. What that means is that the laser applies the exact same amount of power, so the grain shows up. So the more power I apply to this, the more difference in grain I'm going to see. That might be a problem because that grain might show up when you are rolling out your dough. As far as use of these goes, I've tried a couple of flat stamps that I have made. They work okay, the flat stamps. I haven't tried this one yet. I'm told the trick is to make sure you have a good dusting of flour on top of your dough, shortbread or gingerbread type dough, something that's not leavened. And that will keep it from sticking. If you do get bits of flour in here, I'm told to use soap and water, and that should take care of it. So let's do how you do this. It's actually very simple because all you have to do is think of this as a flat picture. That's all there is to it. So you take a measuring tape and you measure the diameter around the circumference of the circle, the exterior. In my case, that's about 6 inches, 6¼ inches. Then you have to measure the length of the pin. And in this case, it comes out to about 10 inches. Now, that gives you a picture that's going to be 6¼ inches high and 10 inches in width. What I use is I use Inkscape, and I like Inkscape for a number of reasons. It's free. It works on my El Cheapo computer that's running a free version of Linux. Um, and it allows me to do vector and raster graphics. Shortly, vector graphics are your dot matrix printer, where the shape is composed of lines of dots that go across. Raster, oh, sorry, that's raster. Vector is a line, it's a formula that traces the outline. You don't need to do any vector graphics for this. You can use straight raster graphics, which means you can produce your image using Microsoft Paint if you want to. It's going to be that simple. I'm going to show you Inkscape because that's what I like. And honestly, it's got a bit of a learning curve, but it's a very shallow learning curve. And once you learn how to use it, you can do some awesome stuff for lasers, embroidery, CNC embroidery. You can use it for Cricut or Silhouette Cameo, the paper cutters. You can do all sorts of cool things. So let me go to screen sharing, if I can find it again. I had this just a moment ago. No, that's going to turn off. Where's my screen? There it is. Okay. And oh, hang on. Doesn't want to share that. So now let's try that. There it is. Okay. All right. You should still be able to hear me. I've got a basic document here that I put up when I started everything up. I'm just going to get rid of all of this. There might be some lagging, so I will try to go fairly slow. This is Inkscape. I'm going to start a new document. Well, no, I'm not. I'm just going to resize this one. And I don't know if it's going to share the pop-up screen as it comes up, but I've just opened the document properties. I'm going down to custom size. I'm selecting units, which is currently in pixels. I'm going to go to inches. And I'm going to set my width to 10 inches. I'm going to set my height to 6.25 inches. And then I'm going to hit enter. And my document's going to resize. I'm going to close this screen, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit and zoom back in. So there it is. That's the field that will engrave. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put something in there, an image. And let me see what I've got. I go to File. I'm going to import. And the reason I'm importing is because Inkscape deals with vector graphics natively. Anything you make in Inkscape is going to be a vector graphic. I'm just going to import a bitmap or a raster image. And I can bring in, well, here, I'll bring in this. This is not the greatest image, but it's going to give you an idea. So what happens here is that everything that is white is going to be left alone. Everything that is black is going to be engraved. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. This is for a playing card experiment that I was doing. It's just a simple black and white drawing. Once it's imported, I can resize the image any way I want to. I have the ever useful edit undo to return back to where I wanted to be. Up here where on the top toolbar, there's a little lock between the width and the height. If I do that, that will keep the format exactly the same. So the proportions exactly the same. Super useful. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a repeating pattern. So I've got my graphic. Now I'm leaving space between the edges. And it's a good idea to do this because the operators have to position the laser manually. And in my experience, they're a little bit sloppy about it. So when your design is engraved onto the rolling pin, you might get some slippage from side to side. So by allowing for that, when you make up your design, you'll be much happier. I can copy this just by doing a Control C, and then I Control V to paste it. You can use whatever design you want. The astute among you, and I do not include myself in that number, will notice that sample is printed the right way around. The laser is going to engrave this onto the rolling pin exactly as you see it here on the screen, which means that when I roll this out using my rolling pin, the writing will be backwards. So be aware of that. Your writing has to be reversed if you're going to want it to be legible. The stags that I did were facing the wrong way on this rolling pin. They will come out facing to the right rather than facing to the left. Let me just finish copying these. All right, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. All right, this is kind of nice. Now, here's the reason that I like Inkscape. If I select these images and I go to Object, Align and Distribute, I get all these awesome tools. It's pretty much like PowerPoint, but it allows me to say distribute the centers so that they're equally distributed. It allows me to align them on various axes so that they are all lined up nicely. And this alone, I feel, is worth learning Inkscape for. Zooming out slightly, I can select all these objects, Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and I can just take these, line them up. Now, these were all that I wanted to do. I can also use a function called grouping. So I go to Object, Group. Now, this is one object. If I click on it, everything moves. If I click on this object alone will move and the rest of the row will be left. So I'm going to group these. I'm going to group these. And now I want this about down here. And so now I select all of these and I distribute the edit centers equidistantly. I align their centers. Now I have something. I can go align relative to selection, or in this case, page. And now my pieces are perfectly centered. If I wanted to do that along the vertical axis, then I can, but first I've got to group them. So now it's all one object. And there. Perfectly aligned. So now I take this design and I recommend File, Save, and save it as an Inkscape document. It comes up with the screen and it allows you to save it as an SVG. I don't know if you can see the screen. Different versions of Inkscape have different functionality. In the version that I'm in, if I want to save this, I can save as. I can change the file type. lasers will take a JPEG file. I don't recommend ever, ever, ever using a JPEG. JPEGs, they lose detail, and you don't want to lose detail. I recommend saving this as a PDF or a Cairo PNG, star.png file. I like the PNG file a lot. So once you've saved it, let me do that. Let me save it as a PNG file.
Just FYI, PNG files, raster file, PDFs can actually be a vector file.
Yes. But for these purposes, you're only going to want to have the rastering. You don't really want to do any vector cutting on this. So I'll save it. And now I will close down Inkscape. So I will, sharing is stopped. I'm going to call up my document. Yeah. With an image viewer. And there it is. Oop, I'm not showing you. You can't see it. Dun, dun, dun. So there it is. Things you need to be careful of when you're designing your rolling pin. And in this, I'm getting out of my comfort area because it's into good graphic design practices, good layout practices. And frankly, I'm not very good at that. You want to space things nicely. You want to assume that you are not going to get the rolling pin top and bottom of your design to meet up exactly. You're going to want to assume that there's a little overlap or that there's going to be a little gapping between those. You can probably, with practice, eliminate that. And if you're seriously trying to make a bunch of complicated rolling pins, it's worth your while to do so. But if you're just making a couple of specialty rolling pins for yourself, then I don't really recommend it. It's not time you need to use. So let me get rid of this, and I'm going to call up a file. It's just going to take me a minute. Does anybody have any questions?
Nope, but if you'd like to learn more about design or the other programs, I can help you with that.
I would like to learn more about design with other programs, but first I have to get a computer that can use them, other design programs, because Ubuntu does not run a lot of the good stuff, and I can't afford a lot of the good stuff.
I believe GIMP, if you want a raster-based, GIMP can work for Linux.
I use GIMP and I use Inkscape, and those are my primary graphic design programs. If I'm doing 3D stuff, which I've started working on, I tend to use very simple stuff like Tinkercad, but a couple of programs as well. What I'm calling up right now is I'm calling up a file that I have with some images of cookie molds. And there's a lot of folk myth associated with the cookie molds. There are people that will tell you that cookie molds go back to the 12th century or back to the time of Christ. I haven't seen a lot of evidence for that. What I have seen evidence for is that cookie molds were super, super popular in the 16th century and the 15th century. And I've seen some examples that are dated back to the 14th century. Those were all religious. And let me get this file up. There it is. So I'm sharing data with a bunch of people apparently. There it is. Oh, no, 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 no. Wrong file. Sorry for the delay. I can't preload the stuff. As I mentioned, I'm running a Dell D630 with 4 gigabytes of RAM. So with the Google Hangout going on, it can handle maybe one thing. That's about it. Okay. See if I can help this along. It may not let me do this. The magic word when you're searching for cookie molds is spring relay. And the Germans have most of the information that I have found. I'm told that the Italians also have a cookie mold tradition, but I haven't found any information on that. And I've also been told that there's a strong tradition in Eastern Europe. But again, I think searching in the native languages is what's going to turn stuff up, and I don't have any facility with those languages. And it is not going to let me bring up this file, so I'm very sorry about that. I will tell you that the cookie molds used in period were primarily religious. The Angus Day, the Lamb of God, is the earliest cookie mold that I am aware of. These were flat molds. I have not seen a design for a flat mold, for a round cookie stamp. But there is absolutely no reason that you could not take a flat design and put it onto a round roller. That's what I plan to do. And with that, I'm going to say I am done unless anybody has any questions.
You were going to talk about where to use the laser?
Oh, sorry, you came in late. I started with that. It's the Arapahoe County Public Library System, and they have a makerspace at the Castlewood Library. It's in Centennial. All you need is a library card. If you are a Colorado resident, then you are eligible to have a library card with the with the Arapahoe County Library System. So you go online to Arapahoe County, you apply for a library card. Once you get the library card, and you'll have to pick it up or have them mail it to you because you need that library card number. Once you have that library card number, you go online, you look up the Castlewood Library Makerspace, and you fill in a request for a studio librarian. Tell them when you want to use the laser, give them a range of dates and times. They'll get back to you to let you know what works best for them. Don't be afraid to negotiate with them because they're willing to change their time as long as somebody else isn't already scheduled. Weekdays are best. During business hours are actually the best time. I'm told nobody's there, probably for the same reason that I'm not. Weekends tend to get busy, so you have to book, 2 or 3 weeks out in advance. And when you show up with your file, and they will operate the machinery. You're not allowed to operate it. So it really is that simple. If you have a properly prepared file with you, then all they'll possibly ask you to do is maybe resize it. They'll ask you to help align the laser or confirm that the laser alignment is what you want. And you're off to the races. It takes about 10 minutes for one of these rolling pins to be engraved.
Now, I realize this is not part of the rolling pin demo, but do they mind as far as materials?
Okay, so lasers will engrave a wide range of materials.
No, I mean, do you supply the materials or do you buy them there?
You supply the materials.
Okay.
And I mean, when I went down testing things out, there we go. I made a wood block for test printing some playing cards. So I'm going to use this to play around with and get my technique down, and then I will go back and I will make some more blocks for printing playing cards. There's a couple of other things that I want to print up, indulgences and stuff like that.
We should talk after this.
Yeah, it's fine. We can talk now. I mean, if you have a question about the materials, I'll tell you the thing you're looking for is you got to be careful with anything that's plastic. And the reason for that is you do not want any PVC, no vinyl, no PVC. When those materials are heated, they give off poison gas. Completely forgetting the name of it right now. Cyanide. They give off cyanide gas, which in addition to being super bad for you and your lungs is really super bad for the mechanics of the laser. But you can engrave pretty much anything. Wood is my favorite thing to work with. I have engraved and cut leather, which stinks. I have engraved and cut bone, which stinks worse. I have engraved and cut laser engravable rubber to make stamps and other objects. That stinks even badder, more bad, more worse. It's really horrible smelling stuff, and it's a pain to clean up. I've experimented with some other materials. You cannot engrave metal, and you cannot engrave glass. You can, however, etch glass, and you can basically you can laser print on metal. You put down a coating of ink, you let it dry, and then you use the laser to set the ink on the metal, and then you wash off the remainder. And that's pretty much what I've got. And we can talk again
Thank
later.
you.
No, you're welcome. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm going to go ahead and stop this.